In this very quick video, we'll enable visibility within Google Cloud Project. So again, we are going to pivot to the Multicloud Defense controller for this because we're going to access the setup wizard once again to enable visibility. Very similar to the other two platforms with a few caveats that we'll kind of touch on within here. So within that setup wizard, I am going to enable visibility for Google Cloud. Again, it's going to ask you, which cloud storage bucket, of course, you want to log those to, and then which VPCs. But what I want to show you is the script is really where all the magic happens. We're not making any API calls directly to Google Cloud in this instance. What's going to happen is we are going to run this bash script within your Google Cloud console. And if you look through here, you can see exactly what happens. Basically, you'll see it in the CLI output as well. We run these echo commands, basically letting you know everything that we're doing within here. So, setting up some VPC flow logs, and then within those VPCs, we're going to attach those flow logs directly to the corresponding subnets within that VPC. Similarly, for DNS policies, so any DNS queries, we're going to try to log those as well. And then just making sure we have all the pub sub and data syncs set up to support this logging configuration and to just make sure that our controller has the capability to go out there and retrieve those. So if you notice, it asks you to copy this, but what I want to show you is as you select, the storage bucket above, as well as these individual VPCs, what happens is within this bash command, I guess, it's dynamically putting in a list. So a comma separated list of these VPCs. So see right here, we've got this YouTube test VPC. If I uncheck it, it's gone. If I recheck it, it's in there. If I check default, it just puts a comma in and basically sets it in there. So that's how you're telling it what VPCs you want to include in this kind of onboarding. So with that selected, I will go ahead and provision a console here. And all we're going to do is paste this in and run it. And it really doesn't take too long. And what I like about the output of this script is it's basically using those echo commands to tell you what it's setting up. So it's not just like a bunch of black magic wizardry in the background doing its thing. It's actually telling you what it's doing as you do it. You will have to authorize the Cloud Shell to perform these actions, so go ahead and do that. And then, like I said, it's basically just going through and it's making sure that everything's set up from a VPC, DNS flow log perspective, making sure the pub sub is notifying the controller of any new logs that have entered that bucket. And at the end of this, we should have a fully functional traffic visibility from, again, a VPC flow log, as well as DNS query logging from within your Google Cloud project. So again, pretty quick, but that was just for a single VPC. If you have more VPCs, of course, take a longer. The delete, if you want to back that configuration out, is again just retained as a shell script within that Google Cloud console. So go ahead and click next here. It does tell you it's going to take up to an hour, and that's just the default nature of basically Google Cloud, right? And I'll show you that here in a minute. It takes up to an hour for those records to start being sent. So don't expect to see this, immediately. It will take a little bit of time. So there's also some documentation. I like to show people this. If you look at the documentation, there's again two sections. There's one for if you went through what we just went through with the onboarding wizard, and it's not going to give you a whole lot of information in there, basically just what that wizard entails. The better section, I think, is down here under traffic discovery and visibility. It actually, if you go into the individual sections, will tell you exactly what's happening in Google Cloud for both VPC and DNS query logging. And this gives you a good basis as well to pivot into the Google Cloud console and look at what was actually configured, in the background. So this is, again, it's kind of like a guide. If you wanted to set this up manually, this is the processes that you go through. Very simply, if you haven't ever seen this before, within that VPC and the subnets, we've turned flow logs on. So flow logs by default are only going to sample at about 50% within Google Cloud. So you can look at all the different settings within here. You can pivot to their log explorer if you want. But what we're doing is we're going to use these logs, I keep wanting to call them log trails, even though that's not technically correct. But we want to take these log trails and essentially say, hey, anything that's logging to these, we want to create a data sync for it. And that's just what Google Cloud calls the mechanism by which we can take those logs as they're being streamed and copy them into a bucket. And what I'm showing you here is within that observability logging section under log router. This is where you create those syncs and where we created the sync with that script. And if you look into this, I think we can edit this. Again, this is where it says, hey, it may take up to an hour before these are available. But if we go in and edit this, we can see, hey, this is logging to that Cisco MCD YouTube log bucket that we set up during the actual account onboarding. And then these are the logs basically that we want to be watching, and anything that's going into those log trails, quote unquote, we want to go ahead and send them into that bucket. So that's the mechanism by which we're getting the logs into that bucket. And then through pub sub, we're actually notifying the Multicloud Defense SaaS controller that, hey, there are new logs available. All of these can be viewed from within Multicloud Defense, again, within that Investigate tab under VPC and DNS flow log. I go into pretty great detail in the AWS video if you want to go back and look at these, but everything should be available within an hour or so. And as I was editing this video, I realized I skipped a crucial component, which was how do we clean this up? Because like the other platforms, Azure, AWS, we don't have a way to essentially take what we did in the setup wizard with enabling traffic visibility to disable the traffic visibility within AWS, GCP, Azure. So what they do in a lot of cases, very similar to what we saw in Azure, is if you open up that cloud console, so the shell within that console, and you look, just kind of list the directory here, you can see there is a delete GCP traffic visibility.sh. So if we want to clean up that configuration, we no longer want that traffic visibility, all we would have to do is run this shell script. So I'm going to go ahead and say delete GCP traffic visibility. We'll reauthorize the shell, and it should go through and basically reverse all of the changes that it made earlier when it enabled visibility across there. So we see it happen much faster. Let's take a quick poke around. We'll look at the VPCs. We'll make sure that flow logging is no longer on for the YouTube test VPC. Look at the subnets. We see that flow logs are now off. If we go back to observability, I believe was here. Yep. And we'll go to log router. We should no longer see that sync. So we still see the sync for the inventory, but we no longer see that sync for DNS queries and the VPC flow logs. So that's how you go and essentially back those out. You can, of course, do it manually through the UI by coming into these individual objects and deleting them out. But again, a very quick and easy way is just to use the delete shell script that we kind of drop into your Cloud Console shell as we do the application of those visibility components. As always, if you found this video useful, keep a keen eye on this channel as we will be releasing more and more content around the deployment and uses of Multicloud Defense and how you can use it to protect your cloud infrastructure. Thank you for watching. We look forward to seeing you in the next video.